are live. Sorry. I'm gonna have my chats here so that I see your messages. Evening to the three of you. All right, super weird because I cannot see you, but you can see me. First of all, I'll wait. Problem is, this is my first time going live on YouTube. Maybe, you know what? I have 10 more minutes. Give me a second. I'm going to take my laptop so that I can use my laptop to read your comments because my phone is actually failing me. So let me quickly take my laptop. Because I want to read your comments. That's the thing. But how is my sound? Can you hear me well? Can you see me well? Oh, I'm excited to Brittany. Okay, okay, guys, we have about 10 minutes. So please use the 10 minutes to calm me down because I've never gone live and I'm a bit nervous. Believe me, I am nervous because normally I just talk to my camera. I don't talk to people that can actually see me. And all right, perfect. If you say my sound is perfect, let me quickly just get my computer to work. Let me insert my password and go to YouTube because your messages keep disappearing and they keep coming back, and I don't want that to be a distraction to me. Yeah, so sound is good. You see, like now you're like, oh, Brittany. You see, these are the things I don't like going live. Thank you so much. Now I'm blushing. Don't worry, we have 9 more minutes, so we can use these minutes to just greet one another. Okay, let me see who's online. Hi, Scissors, darling. How are you? All right, you know what? I probably suck at this live thing. I'm gonna come. No, I don't want to do this. I'm gonna go with my computer just to see the comments. And then I'm seeing Deshi Panda. She's a student of mine. Hi, Deshi has been long. Well, I used to give her classes on Zoom. Sorry for those of you that were asking me to join my Zoom classes. They were like full, and I also just didn't have the time. So, but we're here now, and that's the exciting thing. We are here, and today I get to answer your questions if you sent me your question. In the meantime, please do me the favor of liking the video so that it gets to be recommended to other people. Let us not be selfish. I'm not selfish with the knowledge I have, so let us not be selfish. And then Rivaldo. Good evening to you too. And then, so okay, some of you are just like, ugh. Good evening, Paulus, as well. You're welcome, Brittany. You are truly welcome. Let me just go to my live. I hope you have your pen and paper, not just watching, but you're actually going to take down notes. Looks so weird looking at myself. Good evening, Saddam. So I need to for me to pass this and improve in grade 11. Well, you are in the right place. I hope you're sharing the video with your friends, your family members, and we get everybody to pass their history examination. Okay? Okay, perfect. Now I can be, if you see me looking this side, is because I have to read your comments. But other than that, we'll be chatting on this platform, or I will be answering your questions by looking into the camera. For now, it's just to read your comments. As I say, we still have 7 more minutes. I told people that we will be starting at 8, so I don't want to start before 8 o'clock. There are 11 of you. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm getting better. I was really nervous, and I was just like, if it rains today, no live, because the rain and die, we are not friends. We are not friends. I was not going to do it. It's like, God, please may it not rain, because if it does, then I'm gonna be going back on my promise and I'm gonna let a lot of people down. And thank you. You know, I'm saying thank you guys because you have received it so well. Like on Instagram, I have so many people DMing me and just asking me what time. Some of you, I think you even thought it was morning, because in the morning I was having for like, ma'am, it's 8 and there's nothing. I'm like, PM, PM, not AM. So already in the morning, you guys were prepared to be part of the class. But here we are today. And it was just some crazy idea I had, a few months ago. I was like, you know what, I've been really trying to be helpful on YouTube, trying to help the historians in Namibia and beyond. But why not just have a day where we can really just prepare for the examination, put in a greet. I haven't greeted Helena. Good evening. Anaki, Simeon, African Naturals. So welcome, 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 welcome. You're so, so welcome. And then we still have 5 more minutes. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, how you guys just received it, and I was just like, maybe I can do a live. And I put out the poll. First, I started with the poll. Like, should I go live for the mock exams? Because that was before August, actually. Should I go for the mock exams? Should I go for the final exam? And most of you voted, obviously, for the final examination. And then I put out the post that, send me your questions. And you have been sending me your questions on Facebook, Instagram, right in the comment section. And some of you, I don't know how you got my number, but you've been texting me. I don't know how you got it, but you got it. And you've been sending me your questions. And not everybody's question is going to be answered, because some of you are sending me too many questions. And as I said, I only have 1 hour for paper 1 and 1 hour for paper 2. So I try to squeeze in as many as possible, because today is not just about giving you the surface of the answers, but rather trying to go deeper with you guys with the questions that you have been asking me. If there are grade 11s, as I saw, there are grade 11s on the platform. I want to apologize to you that I'm doing the live today. Reason being, I couldn't do it after the 15th because the grade 12s are writing on Monday, which is 15th, and it will not be fair if I have to do it after the 15th. And also, I don't have the time to do for the grade 12s and the grade 11s, considering the fact that your examinations are kind of similar. The only difference is the depth study that you guys get to write, but other than that, everything is the same. So I don't really have time. In fact, right now I'm supposed to be in church. I'm having choir rehearsals, but I asked myself to be excused just for today, because if I'd gone, this would not be happening right now. So yeah, let's see who else is in the comment section. Okay, 3 more minutes. So what do you guys want to say to me? I mean, apart from greeting me, those that didn't greet me, I've greeted you. Say something. My internet cannot be failing me. This is not going to be, I of all days, my internet doesn't fail me. It cannot fail me today. But I have super hour just in case my internet starts failing me. All right, I have Linai, right? Welcome to the live. Welcome to the live. Anyways, I was saying that I know myself, and naturally I'm a very fast speaker. Okay, so I'm gonna try my best to speak really slow. Thing is this: when I speak slow or slower or slowly, not an English lesson, I go around. When you speak fast, you breathe a lot. But for me, because it's not my natural pace, I breathe a lot. So if I'm going a bit faster, just let me know in the comment sections, and I'm gonna be try to be slower. And if you're not hearing me well, also just let me know in the comment section so that I can project a bit louder. 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes. And we will be starting with the questions. As I said, I hope you got your pen and paper. 2 hours with me. Oh, my name is Sage, by the way, for those of you that don't know, or don't know how to pronounce my name. Some say CG, some say CJ, CIJ. It's actually Sage. Quite easy here. So yeah, that's my name. Some of you call me Sylvie, both my names, but I prefer Sage. There's only one Sage, and that's me. All right, few more seconds and we'll be starting. Oh, thank you, Brittany. Thank you for your kind words. You are 19 and I'm seeing 14 likes. Come on, let's be nice. Like the video. And if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. But I'm very happy because this in the last few days my channels, my subscribers were just go like really going up very fast. I don't know what is in the water, but I like it. Okay, it's 8 p.m. now. Let's begin the lesson. All right. Okay, now the first hour from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, as I've said, I have dedicated it to just paper one. First of all, I'm going to talk about the structure of paper one before I actually get into answering your questions. As I said, you gave me questions. I have noted them down. I've typed them down with the answers. I'm a historian, but I am not a history book. I also need to go through my notes before I got to come live right here, just also to refresh my mind a little bit. As you know, well, if you don't know, I'm not teaching this year because I'm doing other things, but I'm still a teacher. I'm still a history teacher, and history is in my blood. I've always loved history for a very long time. I've majored in history. Yeah. Anyways, as I was saying, that paper one. Now let's get into the structure of paper one. Both grade 11s and grade 12s, even maybe grade 10s if they are grade 10s, because you're going to grade 11 next year. This knowledge might be and will be important to you. All right, so when you get your paper one question for your final examination, it's supposed to have two sections. Section A is on international relations, or should I say world history, but they'll write international relations. Now in section A, you have four different questions depending on your level, being a high level or being an ordinary level student. Your marks will differ. I've already spoken about it in my first video, but I'm going to repeat it again. Your marks will differ. If you are just, a grade 11 student, you are going to have your marks out of 20. One question has 20 marks, all right? Now, for your high level, your one question actually has 25 marks. As I said, you have four questions, and the instructions are very clear. Please read your instructions, because a lot of history students always say, I didn't finish. Some of you don't finish not because you don't know, but because you don't read instructions. You answer everything. So how are you going to finish? Obviously, you're not going to finish. So as I said, in section A, there are four questions. You choose two that you know best. Okay? Two. By two, I mean one question out of 20, or one question out of 25, and another question out of 20, or another question out of 25. Now, as I said, it depends on your level. Now, the questions are always based on the same topics. We're always going to have questions on the peace talks, all right, which now includes the Treaty of Versailles, the Big Three. That is one question. Guys, I just want to let you know now that I'm not going to be reading your comments. I see your comments, but I'm not going to be reading them because I need to focus. But I do see them. I'll probably read them later. Anyways, let's go back to the question. So you're going to have questions on the Treaty of Versailles, and then you are going to have questions on Hitler's foreign policies. You're going to have questions on the United Nations. You're going to have questions on the League of Nations, questions on the Cold War. All right, those are questions that you are going to find, but as I said, you are all going to have different answers, because you might be in the same class, in the same examination, but you might know the Treaty of Versailles and the League more, so you answer the League and the Treaty more. Your colleague or your classmate next door might know more about the United Nations and the Cold War, so they are going to be answering that. It all depends on you, and number them correctly, please, because you're going to have them numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you decide that you're going to answer your question 1 and question 4, and that is how you're going to number it. Don't say question 1 and question 2, because it's not question 2, it's question 4. So you write question 1, you answer all of them, all right? And remember, question 2 needs to start on a clean sheet, because where you end your question 1, you draw a line and you page over and start on a new sheet. You don't continue question 2, 3, or 4 on the same sheet. All right, now that is the part of world history. I hope I was clear. Or international relations. Now you come to section B. Section B is made up of Namibian history and South African history or Southern Africa history. Let me explain this to you. Now, under Namibian history, you'll find two questions, okay? One will be on Namibia under Germany as a German colony, and on the other one, it will be Namibia under South Africa. Remember, we ended the other one it ended at number 4, so this one will be number 5 and 6. In this section, you only answer one question. By one, I mean the 3 making 20 marks or the 3 making 25 marks. So if you're going to choose Namibia under Germany, meaning all the 3 questions must be Namibia under Germany. If you're going to answer Namibia under South Africa, all the 3 questions must be under Namibia under South Africa. You cannot choose the A question is Africa, the B question is Germany. It doesn't work that way. It's either you choose Germany or you choose Namibia. As I said, the numbering is very important. So let's say you decide to choose Germany, which most of the time is number 5, then you number there number 5. If you decide to choose South Africa, which most of the time is number 6, then you have to number it number 6. Don't number it number 3 because you answered only to that side. No, the numbering is very important because the moment you put a wrong number, the teacher is going to mark according to the questions that were on that number. Okay, are we together? Now, on the other portion of the section B, you will find questions on South African history. But listen very carefully. If you are a higher level student, you are likely to find, not even likely, you will find 2 questions, right? One will be on South Africa before 1948. That means South Africa as a union of South Africa, or that means the time that gold was founded in South Africa. So that will be South Africa before 1948. Then you have questions on South Africa after 1948. 48 is a very important year because it was the time that apartheid started. Let me stop there. I'm going to check just in case somebody's saying I'm speaking very fast. Okay, nobody's talking about the level of my, or the speed of my, so we're good to go. All right, as I was saying, now with high level, right? So you either find on South Africa before 1948, South Africa after 1948, and sometimes, not really, but sometime like a very small percentages, you might find questions on Southern African history, focusing on Zambia and Botswana, but that's for high level. So you are only going to choose one question. You can either decide you want questions on South Africa before 1948 or questions on South Africa after 1948, or you can decide if they give you, which rarely happens, if they do give you questions on Botswana and Zambia, then you can answer that. But again, it's a choice. So all in all, you must only answer 4 questions in the whole question paper. 2 on international relations, 1 on Namibian history, and the other one on South African history. That is all you're expected to answer. And you actually have 2 hours, 15 minutes. So in those 2 hours, 15 minutes, you must be able to answer. Now let's get into how you answer these questions. Just briefly, I have a whole video on it, like in details. Now the paper 1 question, or the paper 1 question paper, as I said, has 3 questions, right? You have an A question, a B question, and a C question. Now the A question is mostly the what or describe type of question. This question, if you're high level, no negotiating. You have to write in a paragraph form. Whether you like it or not, you have to write in a paragraph form. If you don't, you'll be penalized for that. Now, if you're ordinary level, that is where you are allowed to actually write in bullet forms. So in ordinary level, the A question is the only question where you are allowed to write in bullet form. From B to C, you need to write paragraphs. Now, the B question is always about explaining. Explain reasons why something happened. I have examples of that, and I'm going to give you answers on the examples based on what you guys sent me. Now, as I was saying, with the B question, you are expected to explain. You don't just name something. You need to explain. Just an example, right? So they'll say, explain reasons why the big 3 could not agree at the Paris Peace Conference. You don't just write, George Clemenceau wanted Germany to be punished, and you keep quiet. No, you need to give reasons. Why did he want Germany severely punished, in comparison to Wilson or Lloyd George? That's just an example. So there, you need to really, really explain. Then we have the C question. In fact, most of the questions that I've gotten today are actually C questions. I think people have difficulties answering the C question. Why? C question comes in a form of a statement. All right? It comes as a statement. It gives you the statement and it asks you to what extent you agree or how far do you agree. When I was in school, all right, when I was in grade 12, many years ago, I think about more than 10 years ago, they would say to what extent, and we were expected to answer to a lesser extent or greater extent. But listen carefully, we don't answer that way anymore. You either agree or you disagree. All right? It comes in a form of a statement. So if the statement says that USA was to be blamed for the Cold War, you have to start your answer by saying, I agree that the USA was to be blamed for the Cold War, and you give your reasons why, right? Now, when you are done with your 3 reasons, why am I saying 3? Because just for writing agree, I agree, is a mark on its own. It's a mark on its own. Now, after you're done with that, you need to write in a paragraph form, guys, why you were saying that it was the USA that was blamed for the Cold War. And I'm going to give you the answer to that. I have a question. Somebody actually asked that question, so I'm going to give you the answers to that. And then, after you're done with the reasons why you agree, for easy marking for the teacher, only skip a line and say, I disagree that the United States was to be blamed for the Cold War, and you give your reasons why you think it was not to be blamed. For ordinary level, that's where you end for the C question. But for high level, you need to give a conclusion. Remember, it's out of 10 marks. So you need to conclude, giving your own conclusion as to why you gave that answer. Are we together? So that is how you are expected to be answering your questions. The format is the same, whether it's Namibian history, South African history, or world history. Let me check. I'm just going to check if okay, all right. I was just checking to see if somebody's talking about my sound or my pace, so that I can slow down or I can project my voice. Okay, so I'm gonna read the questions as they are. They are not in order, so I don't have them as them like this is the A question, this is the B question, but I will tell you, I typed them as they were coming in, as you guys were sending them to me. So the first question that I was asked, so this person says, when asked, was the Treaty of Versailles just that? Is yes. Now, this question comes most of the time as a C question, and it comes in a form of a statement, as I've said. It comes as the Treaty of Versailles was justified. Or they may say the Treaty of Versailles was fair. Remember, the Treaty of Versailles was just for Germany, no other country, right? So it says the Treaty of Versailles was justified or it was not justified. So you have to agree that I agree that the Treaty of Versailles was justified, and you give your reasons why do you say that it was justified or it was fair or that Germany deserved, the punishments that they got. After you have done the justification of our agreement, then you jump on the other side and you say, I disagree that the Treaty of Versailles was justified, or I disagree that the Treaty of Versailles was fair, and you give your reasons. So this person just wanted to know, do you give a balanced view? Yes, you need to give a balanced view. You can't just give one side. As a teacher, even if you give me 10 reasons that it was justified, I'll only mark the first ones because you didn't give me if it was not justified. You just said it was justified. So that's the first question that I was asked. Now the next question that I have here is actually a B or C question. Now the person asked me, who was responsible for the Cold War? There were only 2 countries that were involved in the Cold War: Russia and the United States, USA and USSR. Now, I cannot remember the person's name, but somebody commented under the post I put in my community about having today's live, and the person was giving different reasons on the Cold War, and that person was not wrong. They were talking about the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they were not wrong. But this question, as I said, comes as a B or a C question. And in this case, I want to know who was responsible, because the Cuban Missile Crisis, I almost said Berlin Conference, the Vietnam War, the South Korean War, all those features of the Cold War, but those were not really the reason why the Cold War began in the first place. So today I'll be giving you those reasons. So first I'm going to give you as a B question and as a C question, but the answers remain the same. All right. So if it was a B question, it will be explain reasons why the Cold War began. All right. That's if it's a B question. So you need to give your reasons. You need to give your statement and explain why it began. Now, if it comes as a C question, then you need to answer. So in this case, I'm going to give it to you as a C question, and it says, USA was responsible for starting the Cold War. To what extent do you agree? Explain your answer. So I'll start off by saying, I agree that the United States of America was responsible for starting the Cold War. First of all, the defense or the reaction of the USA was always a defensive one. What am I trying to say? So as long as the Soviet Union or USSR intended to impose communism, right, in Europe, United States of America would always try to meddle and respond in matters that doesn't concern them. It's in Europe. America is in America. So they would always try to get involved in situations that did not have anything to do with them, because USSR was all about spreading communism. For those of you that don't know, USA was for capitalism and USSR for communism. So that's why we say it was responsible for the war, because they were always being defensive even in matters that did not involve them. Another reason why we have Harry Truman. Harry Truman was the president of the United States of America. He was this kind of president that was very much, he always had mistrust and tension towards the USSR. Remember, the USSR had satellite countries in Eastern Europe, and Truman, just because they were in Eastern Europe, Truman was always suspicious. So this also made USSR. I'm going to be saying USSR for Russia and USA for America, right? So this made USSR to also now be like, these people, as I said, they are meddling. Truman is getting into our business. Maybe it's also time that we, attack. But if Truman had not had this tension and mistrust against the USSR, maybe Cold War would never have happened. Another reason was the sphere of influence. America wanted to expand into Eastern Europe. Now, as I said, USSR was already expanding into these countries of Eastern Europe. So America had this idea that we are going to stop with the sphere of influence. We are going to go into Europe and stop them. And how did they try to stop them? With the Marshall Plan. I don't know if you guys know this American banker, George Marshall, but he came up with the Marshall Plan actually to help these Eastern European countries to try and build themselves after the Second World War. I mean, Russia was already trying to help. So why would America try and involve themselves with these loans? Okay, so them again bringing loans into Eastern Europe made USSR not happy. And the last one was the policy of open doors, where America wanted to have a business market for trading, for setting their businesses in Europe. The only reason they were doing it is because they wanted to bring an end to the spread of communism and rather influence these countries with capitalism. So I would say that I agree that the United States of America was the cause of the Cold War, right? However, I disagree that the United States of America was the cause, but rather it was Russia that started or that caused the Cold War. Let me give you the reasons for Russia. Now, George Marshall coming up with the Marshall Plan, his plan was seen as a genuine plan to really help these Eastern countries to try and gain or to try and develop themselves after the Second World War, right? So what did USSR do? They decided that they were going to come up with their own that was called the Molotov Plan. It was just like the same, right, as the Marshall Plan, but they told the people in Europe that, you know what, America always wants something. Yes, they are saying they're giving you these loans, but they want something in return. So why don't you take the loans from us? We're from Europe, and we're not going to ask you to pay a lot of money. And we don't want anything from you. We just want what's best for you. So we will say the USSR was the cause because they decided that they were going to attack the Marshall Plan with the Molotov plan. This now also made the Americans angry. Like, we're not trying to help people here, and you are coming to sabotage our plan. Another reason why I say the USSR was to be blamed was because of how they would always use the weakness of the West to their advantage. Remember, Second World War happened mostly in Europe, so a lot of countries were really, really and badly affected by the Second World War. So what the USSR was doing, that was using the weakness of these people that are weak and they cannot look after themselves to try and advance their communism. So as long as they were trying to advance communism in Europe, America was not going to sit down, idle, and waiting. All right. So I'm saying both countries were to be blamed for the second. Why do I keep saying Second World War? For the Cold War. Very funny, but just in case you don't know what a Cold War was, because I know I'm a teacher, and I asked my students once, what is a Cold War? And they will tell you it's a war that was fought in winter, or it's a war that was cold. It sounds funny, but it's that's not the answer. A Cold War was actually a war of, it was not a hostile war, meaning it was not a war of fighting. There were no weapons involved between the USA and the USSR. It was just a war of tension, right? Can you hear me? Between USA and USSR, these two countries did not fight. But when we're going to talk about the cases of the Cold War, you are going to see that there was actually fighting, but not between the US and the USSR, but rather when they got themselves involved in situations that they were not supposed to be involving themselves in. All right, so I'm done with that question. I'm going on to the next question. Now, this person asked me on the League of Nations. Let me just read the comments quickly. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you. Let's like the video. Let's share the video. We are 42. I see 25 likes. Come on. It's just liking. I'm not charging you $1 for liking. Please. Anyways, let's go on to the next one. Now, this person asked me on the League of Nations. They said, to what extent were Britain and France responsible for the League of Nations? Most of the time also comes as a C question. As I said, a lot of people send me C questions. I think that's because that's the one that you guys are struggling with the most. So I'll put it in a form as how it will come as a C question. It will come as Britain and France were responsible for the failure of the League of Nations. Okay, so that's how it would come. Now I'm going to give you the answers. So I would answer say, I agree that Britain and France were responsible for the failure of the League of Nations. Number one, self-interest. Britain and France only cared, or they only got involved in matters that would benefit them. If a country was being attacked and Britain and France did not benefit from it, they were not going to be involved. A good example, the Spanish Civil War. They were not involved. They decided we are going to stay far away from that war because we are not gaining anything out of it. The only people that got themselves involved were the Japanese, the Italians, and the Germans. Britain and France decided that they were not going to be part of it. So they were more about self-interest rather than helping the League of Nations to maintain peace. Number two, I said they did not have an army. You know that. And the army was actually supposed to come, the greater number of the army was supposed to come from the British and the French. Why? Because those were the only two superpower countries that were part of the League. But the two were too selfish to give the army. If we go back to Hitler and the rearmament, conference when they met, and actually the disarmament, sorry, not rearmament, the disarmament conference, if you guys remember, that Hitler went there and he said, you know what, guys, my army was reduced to 100,000 men. So what we're going to do, allow me to increase my army to your level, right? But they said no, because they were afraid that if Hitler has the same army as them, war was likely to come. So they said no. But then Britain was trying to compromise and say, fine, what we can do, because we don't want you to rearm and we also don't want to disarm, what we are going to do is that we, as Britain and France, we are going to disarm our soldiers on the ground, right? That was Britain's proposal. But France said no. The reason why France said no is because if you look at the map of Europe, France is a landlocked country, and it depends mostly on its ground forces than on its navy. So it's like, no, we are not going to reduce our forces on the ground, because if we are attacked, we have nobody to defend us. So why don't we actually just reduce the navy? Now look at the map of Britain up there. They depend on the navy. Remember, we're talking about the disarmament conference was 1932. So at the time, it was more about ships than planes. So they're like, if we are attacked through the sea and we reduce our navy, how are we going to defend ourselves? So at the end of the day, nobody wanted to rearm or disarm, which made Hitler leave and go, and just started rearming in secret, and later having to rearm for the whole world to see. But why am I saying this? I'm saying this to say that Britain and France never wanted to give their army or to give their soldiers as part of the army, because if they did, at least all these countries that were being attacked, they would have been defended. And if you go back to the way to your failures of the League of Nations, you see most of these could have been avoided, because if only Britain and France had an army. Another reason is that, yes, as I said, they failed at defending smaller nations. Let me give you the incident of what happens between the Greeks and the Italians. A soldier of the Greeks, or a Greek soldier, was shot on the side of Italy, right? And at the end of the day, it's considered actually a failure of the League of Nations, because what the League of Nations did was that they ruled in favor of Italy, Italy being at fault, right? It was ruled in their favor. And Greece was very, very angry, because they were made to pay sanctions, and they also made to apologize in public to the Italians. But the Italians were the ones that were wrong. I'm saying this to say that smaller nations were not really defended, which made them lose interest in the League of Nations, and also that brought to the collapse of the League of Nations. Another reason why we would say that, yes, we would say that the British and the French were to be blamed was the sanctions. The League of Nations had a hierarchy of how they would sanction the countries. There was a verbal sanction. So if a country invaded another country, they would verbally communicate to them and tell them that you need to leave, right? It's just verbally, which never worked for people like Hitler, for example. You would tell Hitler you need to leave in this year, out the other ear, right? So that was the first type of sanction. Now, if that doesn't work, they would then come to the economic sanction, where they would say that countries cannot do business with you, you cannot trade with them, and that would affect you economically. But if these countries were not depending on Britain and France for anything, it wasn't going to work. A good example, the Abyssinian Crisis. Looking at Italy and Ethiopia. When Italy went to Ethiopia to go and invade, not colonize, invade Ethiopia for their resources, they imposed economic sanctions, but that didn't work for Italy. Italy didn't care. They weren't depending on them for anything, so it didn't work. And then we come to the last type of sanction, which is the military sanction. Now, if the first two sanctions don't work, that is when the League of Nations is supposed to say, we are sending in the army to go and fight. But what army? They didn't have an army. So they can't send in an army. If they had an army, a lot of incidents would have been avoided, and the League of Nations would still have been standing. Remember, all this was happening in the 1920s until the 1930-ish, before 1939, right? 39, why a very important year? Second World War happened. Now we go on the other part of the question, that I disagree that the League of Nations, or I disagree that the British and the French were responsible for the failure of the League of Nations. Now, these were the reasons that we say that other reasons contributed. First one, I'm going to talk about stronger nations were not members of the League of Nations. By stronger nations, I mean Germany, Italy, USA, USSR, Japan. If those countries were part of the League of Nations, at least the League of Nations would have been having a stronger army. Now, since I'm talking about these countries, this can come as a big question. It can come as explain reasons why superpower countries were not part of the League of Nations. So you need to talk about why America was not part of the League of Nations. Remember, League of Nations was proposed by America, but they never joined. So you need to give reasons why. I'm just quickly going to brief you, because I said that they wanted to stay out of other countries' affairs. All right, so they were never part of the League of Nations. Germany was never allowed to join the League of Nations. They only joined in 1926 during the time of Gustav Stresemann because he was, sorry, because he was one of those German leaders that was realistic or was willing to listen and would always compromise. Then we have Italy also now allowed with Benito Mussolini. They couldn't join the League of Nations. So you give reasons why they were not allowed to be members of the League of Nations. But coming back to it as a C question, as I said, so they were a contributing factor because if they were part of the League of Nations, the League of Nations would have been having a bigger army. Another reason I put here was the Great Depression of 1929. With Great Depression came the rise of nationalism and dictators. If you look at events that happened and that led to the Second World War, they were all happening after 1929 because countries were angry, countries were hungry. They needed to prey on somebody. So the Great Depression of 1929 really made countries to go out there and invade other countries, which then resulted in the League of Nations shifting its focus from world peace and bringing into we need to stop these people or we need to start getting ready for war. Now, another reason for why the League of Nations failed was Hitler. The foreign policy of Hitler. The foreign policies of Hitler were, Hitler, his foreign policies were crazy. You just, if you have to go back and just check it, or, how he took over Austria, how he took over Czechoslovakia. Actually, he even wiped Czechoslovakia from the face of the earth. That's even the reason why we don't have Czechoslovakia today, because of Adolf Hitler, how he was able to get the Rhineland back, how he's able to invade Poland. Now, the foreign policies of Hitler and him rearming made Britain and France, or the League of Nations, to totally put all its power in rearming and getting ready for the Second World War. They didn't see it coming. They didn't know when it was going to happen. But they just know if we have Hitler rearming, something is about to come. And they were right, because Second World War happened because of Hitler. All right. Okay. All right. We together? Now, the next question is a big question. This person says, they sent me the question that says, explain the military tactics USA used during the Vietnam War. I'm going to repeat. Explain the military tactics that USA used during the Vietnam War. Remember I said with Cold War, Russia and America never really fought, like going head to head. They always fought by getting themselves involved in other countries' affairs. Yeah, Vietnam was one of them. So we have North Vietnam and we have South Vietnam. North Vietnam with its leader Ho Chi Minh, right? So with Ho Chi Minh, he was being aided by the Russians. Why? Because he was pro-communism. Then we have South Vietnam being aided by America because they were pro-capitalism. Now the question is focusing on what military tactics did America use in this type of war? All right, let's see. The first of the military tactic that they used was rolling thunder. Now, rolling thunder was basically America just saying, we're going to go to North Vietnam and we're going to drop bombs. I'm sorry, whoever get bombed. But we're just going to drop bombs on Vietnam. That way, it's going to stop them, right? So, not really. It just even made them really, really angry. So, the first military tactic that they were depending on was the rolling thunder, where they went and they were dropping bombs on North Vietnam. Now, the second tactic was they saw, okay, bombs are not really working. Let me tell you what was in North Vietnam. North Vietnam had the Viet Congs. Now, the Viet Congs were guerrilla fighters, all right? These were peasants or the farmers. And these people were seen as civilians, but they were not civilians. They were fighters, guerrilla fighters. So they looked like normal people, or sometimes they would dress themselves up in bushes and everything like that. So they saw that the bombs are not really working, so they went for their second tactic, which was the dropping of Agent Orange, which was a chemical. So they dropped it on the jungles, right? Burning and everything and destroying everything. They dropped about 800 million liters, 800 million liters of Agent Orange on until today. The effects until today, the effects are still in North Vietnam. So that was their second military tactic. Their third was napalm. Napalm was acidic, a chemical which was acidic, so it falls on you and it burns you. A very famous picture, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this picture, but there's a very famous picture of a young girl. She's running in the streets of North Vietnam naked. The reason why she's running naked is because she had to strip off the clothes because they were burning, and the only way she could save herself was through her getting rid of the clothes. So that is one military tactic that they used. They were dropping napalm, and a lot of people got burned. All right. So because they didn't know which one is which, who's the civilian, who's the Viet Cong, they all look the same. Another military tactic they used was the search and destroy. So what they would do, they would go in the villages because the Viet Congs were peasants, remember, so they were not living in towns. They would go in the villages and search for anyone who looked suspicious. As I said, these people did not wear uniforms. The Viet Congs never carried big arms. They did not even have an army, or an army base like the Americans. Americans had a base, which was really easy to bomb, like, because you know where they are. But with the Viet Congs, they're like, you're sitting next to somebody, think I'm sitting next to a nobody, and then boom, you're dead because it's a Viet Cong. So what they did with the search and destroy, they went into the villages of North Vietnam looking for the people. Unfortunately, this was not a really, really good tactic because they ended up killing a lot of civilians. Even themselves, they walked into traps because most of the Viet Congs were having their bases under. So the Americans would walk there thinking it's just a plain road, but actually it's a trap, and they would fall in those traps and died. So a lot of civilians died as a result of the search and destroy tactic. So therefore, tactics, and that should give you all the marks that you need. Okay, time flies. Okay, so these questions that I left are actually on Namibian history. This patient, excuse my chaos. Anyways, this person asked, to what extent did the Namibians benefit from the South African occupation? What I like about this question is very specific. Underline the keyword South African. Because if they had just said, to what extent did the Namibians benefit from colonialism, you could have, there you have the liberty of talking about either Germany or South Africa, but here they were very, very specific on that. They just want you to focus on South Africa. So when you talk about the benefits, it's a C question, by the way. So you obviously start off, I agree that the Namibians benefited from the South African occupation. Now, when you answer this type of question with this specific question, I always refer my students, you know what? Go to the Odental plan. I have a video on the Odental plan, by the way. With the Odental plan, it's very, very easy to let you know how they benefited and how they did not benefit. The economic recommendations are always, give me a second. I'm so thirsty. Anyways, now the economic recommendations are about what Namibians benefited, all right? And the political recommendations is about what Namibia lost as a result of the Odental plan. Now we're going to see how Namibians benefited from the South African occupation. Number one, the hydroelectric power station was built in Kunene, which meant that the northern part of the country, by north I mean all the way to East Caprivi, or Caprivi, benefited, or they got electricity. That's one thing, how they benefited. Number two, water. Water was provided, both the north, the south, the west, the east. In the north, canals were dug, and in the south, we're talking about dams such as the Hardap Dam. So those were also dug or made to provide water for the people of Namibia. Another way they benefited was through the education system. Schools were built for Namibians, and we have the Augustinian College for teachers, as well as the hold on a second. Why am I saying hold on a second? Because one of you guys just texted me, and now I am disturbed. Anyways, all right, I'm going back. The Oshakati, what's the name of the school? The Oshakati Nursing School was opened in the north for nurses. So that was education that they gained. We're talking about gravel roads being turned into tarred roads. And also, small businesses, kind of, for farmers, were kind of to be opened or to gain from it, but not really. They were given small loans so that they could benefit from the loans. But yeah. Another thing was the mines. New mines meant new jobs for people. Remember, with the contract labor system in so many Texas, people had to start working, and through at least the occupation, they could get jobs and they were able to support their families. That's how they kind of benefited from the occupation of South Africa. However, on the other hand, I disagree that they benefited. I don't think they benefited really from the occupation. Number one, the education system of the black people was really, really low and was really, really weak. Remember when we spoke, I have a video on apartheid laws, and one of them was the Bantu Education Act of 1953, whereby the education of the black people could only go until a certain grade. And if you have that level, you can't really, really, really do much. You can only be a contract worker. Another way that they did not benefit is that a lot of people were killed. We're talking about the massacres such as the Kasinga massacre. We're talking about the Ongulumbashi clash. We're going to talk about the Vinduk massacres. All those videos are on my channel, by the way. They are there. You are 40. I have 34 likes. 6 more and it will be even. Anyways, let's go back to how Namibians did not benefit. People were killed. That is true. There was no freedom. There was no equal rights between the black Namibians and the white Namibians. So it was not really a win situation for them. And they were not really allowed to have businesses. I said small loans were given to farmers, but not everybody. That's why even in the old location, you saw that the businesses belong to the white South Africans, such as the beer hall. They're not really allowed to have their own businesses. So those are some of the ways that Namibians did not benefit from the occupation of South Africa. Okay, I have 20 more minutes to paper one. Now, this person asked me, said, it's a big question. This person said, explain the reasons why Namibians hated the contract labor system. I feel like that is such an easy question. I have a video on that. I mean, I think I have a video on everything except world history, because world history is everywhere. Anyways, going back to my lesson, explain reasons why Namibians hated the contract system. Number one, their contracts were too long. By too long, I mean 12 to 18 months. But the reason I'm saying they're too long is that they were not allowed to visit their families. If you go to the mine, to the farm, you stay there until you're 18 months. They're not allowed to also take their family members along. So when the man leaves, he leaves and he comes back after 18 months. Now, what happens with that? When you come home, you might find a young boy or a young girl running around when you know you have not been around for 18 months. When daddy's away, mommy gets to play. What I'm trying to say is that women found comfort in the arms of men that were left in the villages. It's the same thing. Sorry to say this, but it is true. That's why you see that we have fathers who have fathered children in where they were working, you know, whether in Walvis Bay, whether they're putting the canning factory in Walvis Bay, those were in Tumeb. But the person is from Kavango, but they have children down south. That's because 18 months was just too long, so they found comfort in the arms of women that were that side. Another reason why they hated the contract labor system is that once you get sick, you were not allowed to return. You were sent home sick. If you get better, you're not allowed to come back. And the medical attention was just so horrible. Another reason why they hated it was the places where they were staying. The compounds were overcrowded. And not only overcrowded, they slept on concrete beds, actually. And one cell, just smallest a cell, could, you know, house about 10 people. And another thing about the contract labor system they hated was that when you arrived at your workplace, you were not allowed to keep any of your documents. They were taken by your boss because they're afraid that you're going to run away. And you were going to run away because the job was really, really, really hard. So without your papers, you can't go. Remember, that was the system of the Dom Pass or the passbook. And with your passbook, that's where your permission was. So if you're found, you ran away and you're found without a permission, where do you think that's going to lead you? Okay, you're going to go to prison, all right? So they hated that about it. And they also hated the fact that they were only allowed to have one pair of shorts and one pair of shirts. Imagine for 18 months. That is cruel. Anyways, for 18 months, you're only allowed to have that, and you could not be given other pairs of clothes. And another reason why they hated it, they also hated it because they were given machinery to work with, machinery that they never know, like they never came into contact. You are in a canning factory, you are cutting cans, you know, you need a sharp machine. You are given a manual, right? Here's your manual, read. How do you read when you only have grade 4? Ne? And this English is hard, or this Afrikaans was hard. The only Afrikaans that you knew was to greet. And so it was really hard, and they hated that about it. They hated the fact that they had to work for very long hours and for very, very little pay. I think those reasons are enough. I have my computer. Give me a second. Okay. And the other question I was asked about Namibia was, describe how the Germans destroyed self-government of indigenous people. That's an A question. All right. I said ordinary level, you can just bullet point or write in bullet form, but high level, I really expect you to write in a paragraph. I repeat the question. Describe how the Germans destroyed self-government of indigenous people. By indigenous people, we are referring to the I'm going to say the Namas and the Hereros, because when we talk about the Germans, they were mostly on the Namas and the Hereros more than they were on anybody else, because up north, the Ovambos were fighting the Portuguese. So it was really more about describe how the Germans destroyed the self-government of the Ovaherero and Nama people. That's basically what you would say, but they would rather say indigenous people. Okay. All right. All right, so let's get to number one. The Germans destroyed the self-government of Namibian people, or the indigenous people, number one, by confiscating their land. So they took their land and they gave it to white Germans that came here because they needed land to settle. There was no land. So what did they do? They just took it by force. Number two, they destroyed that by taking away their cattle. These people no longer had their cattle. Somebody had access to their cattle. Number three, they destroyed it by giving the Namibians to sign the protection, I'll say so-called protection treaties, because our people, not being able to read, they signed them, thinking that they were going to be protected. The reason why it was called a protection treaty is because Germany was supposed to be a protectorate, meaning that they were supposed to protect the Namibians against the British invasion, but in reality, they were just going to take the land, the cattle of the Namibian people. They also betrayed or took away the governance by making it very clear that the chiefs and the kings were no longer in charge, and if you listen to those people, you were going to be punished. So they took over the ownership of these people. Another way they took away the governance was through reserves. I'm sure you've heard of homelands. I have a video on that as well. Yes, when I talk about the Oriental Plan. The homelands, right? That's South Africa. But before homelands, there were reserves. So the reserves were again like the homelands, but rather it was more like the Hereros one side, the Namas one side. So through that, it was easy control. They could actually control the Namibians by keeping them in their reserves. And if you're found outside your reserve, you were then punished. So people were afraid to leave. So what did they do? They stayed in the reserves. Oh, all right. I think I am done for paper one with your questions. Whew. Okay. My computer is off. Let me go to your comments. Oh my gosh, where do I start? So I have Caroline's question. She's asking, Miss, 9 out of 10. Okay, she's saying 9 out of 10 in the examination, they do always put the Treaty of Versailles and League of Nations, right? So Caroline, to answer your question and how I started off, I said, in your paper one, right, in your part of international relations, you find 4 questions. There will always be questions on the treaty, always on the League, always on Cold War, always on the United Nations. Now you yourself, you decide. Which one do you want to answer? The League, treaty, Cold War, or United Nations? It's up to you. All right, so they will always put it. And I don't know why people, personally, right, I prefer the League and the treaty. They are so easy. And with the League would mostly also sometimes come with questions on foreign policies of Hitler, because his foreign policies led to the collapse of the League, or his foreign policies were happening round about the same time as the League of Nations. So yes, Caroline, it's not even 9 out of 10, it's 10 out of 10. They are going to ask you questions on the treaty, on the League, on the foreign policies, on the Cold War, or on the United Nations. But you yourself, you have to decide which ones do you know best. The students that I teach, I always advise them, or I always teach them that you're not always going to remember everything. So let us focus only on 2 topics. Let us focus on the treaty and the League And also the foreign policies. That's just much better. Then you don't really have to go to the Cold War. But if you like the Cold War and it's interesting, it's actually interesting, you know, the Cold War, where you talk about the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, you talk about the Vietnam War that I just started talking about, even Namibia. Namibia is also involved in the Cold War. If you go to Resolution 435, you'll understand how we were involved in the Cold War. Let me see if I can take one more question. I'm very punctual with time, guys. Yo. Okay, so how do I conclude for both papers? What do you mean both papers? Because one thing you must know, paper 1 and paper 2 are not answered the same way. Totally different questions, like totally different ways of answering. Don't worry if you're just joining now, you have missed the whole of paper 1. But you haven't missed paper 2 because at 9 o'clock, I'll be starting with paper 2. So I don't really understand you when you say that, how do I conclude? You just give your own, in paper 1, you just, if high level, you just give your own conclusion at every C question, how you really think. Okay, the League of Nations and the truth must come. They will always come. How do they calculate our marks for history? Anyone to please answer? All right, so they put your 2 marks together because you don't have a CA. You don't have a CA. Everything comes from your examination. That's why you must ace those examinations. They'll put your paper 1 marks together with your paper 2 marks, and they'll get the answer. All right. Obviously, with high level, I always say people, I don't know why people do ordinary level, because high level, it's so easy to get marks. I mean, with what? You need a 40, that's already 6 points. I don't know why people do ordinary level. By the way, I only taught high level. My students, I never allowed my students to have any to have ordinary level. Okay, Britney's here praying, declaring and decreeing people that will get A+. Well, so shall it be in Jesus' name. Remp is saying, guys, I'm together with Yunga Shiri. I'm still at explanation of section B. Yo, I'm sorry, guys. I'm only seeing your questions now because if I have to read your questions, time is not on our side. That's the thing. Sorry. But if you missed it, Rempis, as I said, I have the videos already on my channel. You can always go back. My very first videos, I think it's the second video, that's where I explained about how you answer paper 1. And if for paper 2, obviously we're going to do it now, but it's more in details on the YouTube video that I recorded than how we are going to do it now. And I'm going to explain to you now why it's not going to be in details. Okay. Just all right. Okay, Kamundu is asking me, ma'am, what topics are under Namibian history? Namibian history will only have 2 questions. By 2, I mean 2 different questions, 1 out of 20 or 25. You always have questions on Namibia under German occupation. They can ask you anything, you know, they can ask you, or like, for example, they can say they can give you a C questions that Germans came to Namibia for land. So you need to defend your reasons why you're saying they came for land, right? And then obviously give reasons that they didn't come for land. They also came because they wanted to exploit the country. They were looking for market for Namibia. So that's one part of Namibian history. And then another portion they will ask you will be questions on Namibia under South African colonization. They have everything. Oof. Starting from the SWAPOs, let me talk about the political parties. You have the different massacres. They will ask you questions on the apartheid. I'm trying to remember things that I have in my head. But basically, just know that for the Namibian portion, they're always going to ask you 2 questions, one on Namibia under Germany, and one on Namibia under South Africa. You as a student, you know which one you studied better, so you answer the questions on that. As I said, don't mix and match. Don't say, A, I'm going to take from Namibia under Germany, and then B, I'm going to take from Namibia under South Africa. Sorry, you're going to fail. So you just have to be either Namibia under Germany or Namibia under South Africa. Okay, okay, so Lucky is saying, one last question, ma'am. In 1978, the United Nations Resolution 435 proposed a ceasefire and free election. What's more important? Explain your answer. What's more important between a ceasefire and free elections? I don't know what you really want to say, which one is more important, both of them were important because both of them were part of the resolution 435. Since we're talking about resolution 435, as far as I'm concerned, until now I've mostly just seen it as an a question, like describe resolution, the aims of resolution 435. Just really fast, I'm just going to run through. And the person is right. It was 1978. One of them was that a ceasefire between Namibia and South Africa, free and fair elections that will be moderated by the United Nations, UNTAG or UNTAG, it depends how you say it, with Matia Tisari as the moderator. They also had to release all political prisoners. They also had to release or free Walvis Bay. Walvis Bay was part of South Africa, remember? It was actually even part of South Africa until 1994. Even though Namibia was independent in 1990, South Africa, where we only got Walvis Bay in 1994 with Nelson Mandela. Another aim of the ceasefire that I can remember was, I spoke about political prisoners, also the refugees also had to be brought back. That's why I say 1989. A lot of survivors of Kasinga were brought back to Namibia. So mostly that question comes as an A question. Deshi, if you're watching this, you sent me a message, but I cannot read it now. All right, Brittany is asking, how many minutes do I have? I have 5 minutes to paper one. Well, Brittany is asking, in section B, should we focus on before or after 1948? What level are you? If you're high level, definitely before and after will always be there. But before is not easy. But like before, you need to talk about, I don't even know if you guys know about Moshushu. It's Moshushu, right? I say, no, it's not Moshushu, it's Musheshe, right? The Musheshe, he was the king of the Swati people. So most of the time, even though they do give you before and after, I advise students, take after. After is so easy. After is just talking about the Sharpeville massacre, the uprising of 1976. They will be talking about the Freedom Charter. They will be talking about why FW de Klerk decided, oh, he passed on, by the way, may his soul rest in peace. I'm nice, so yes, may his soul rest in peace. Why de Klerk decides to give South Africa its independence. It's going to talk about the march of the freedom march of the women of Pretoria. So that's mostly after 1948 has to do with apartheid. So I would say focus more on 48 because after 48, because before 48 really, whoa, that history is hard. All right. Explain more about apartheid. Helena, my time is up for paper one, but I have a very detailed video. No, in fact, I have 2 detailed videos. One just talks about the laws of apartheid. By the laws, I talk about the acts, such as the Education Act, the Amnesties Act, the Pass Law Act. That's on my channel. You can watch after the live. And I even have a video on how apartheid, or the factors that led to apartheid coming to an end. In fact, for those of you that are going to ask, because of time, for those of you that are going to come against a question that says, explain reasons why the opposition in South Africa against apartheid was high after the 1960s, that video on reasons why apartheid ended has the answer for you. Okay. Right. Yes, Ndaponiko says, I think she's answering Maya. Maya, I think, asked, guys, I can see your questions really. She says, I think it has to do with the conclusion. So she says, we have to conclude, like, in conclusion, all the factors are equally important to bring the independence of Namibia. Factors such as, SWAPO, churches, and she's correct. So that's how you just conclude that all of them are important. It's not a one-sided thing. That's why the teacher requires you to answer on both sides. Okay, Ms. Amores, I think we can now move on to paper 2. Yvonne, your question on how you can answer a B question, I recommend, I'm going to send you to my video after this, obviously. Please go and watch my video on my channel. It gives you the answer on how you answer the A, the B, and the C type of question. Here it was just to go through and to try and give you answers to the questions that you guys have asked me, okay? Now, paper 2. Paper 2 is a headache for a lot of people. And I say paper 2 is actually the easiest paper. In fact, you're supposed to get 40 out of 40 or 60 out of 60 because okay, like Linai on paper 2, I'm getting to paper 2 right now. Okay. Paper 2 is so all right, as I was saying, paper 2 is the easiest paper. Why? Answers are in the question paper. If I had a question paper example, I will show you. I don't think I printed one, but it's on my channel. So with the question paper of paper 2, let me start with the structure. Grade 11s, you guys are writing your paper 2 on Namibian history or Russian history. It depends on your school. All right. I have people who are writing Russian history, and I have people who are writing Namibian history. With the Namibian history, they'll give you either on Germany or they'll give you on South Africa. They decide, not you, not your school. Your school only decides which history to give you, but the status of the examination, they are the ones to decide which questions they want to ask, whether it will be a Namibian history or Namibia under Germany or Namibia under South Africa. Okay, that's grade 11. Grade 12. So far as I'm concerned, you are supposed to be writing your depth study on Germany, USA, Western imperialism. All right. Most of the government schools, normally just write Germany. Private schools are the ones that like to be very risky and go for Western imperialism, or some go for the United States of America. All right. But I specialize mostly in Germany. Not that I don't know the other, but I'm going to talk about that, right? Now, with your question paper as it comes, let me talk about grade 12. It will come with 3 types of depth studies. Your cover page will write 3 types of depth studies, right? You have depth study A, depth study B, and depth study C. Normally, depth study B used to be Germany, right? But as I said, I don't know if there's somebody from a private school here, but government school mostly NAMCO and what you guys are going to write Germany, I know for sure. So you will choose depth study Germany. It doesn't matter if it's written A as Germany or B or C. Wherever they place it, just know you are answering Germany. Now, the other 2 don't exist in your mind. You focus on the one that you are supposed to be writing. In this case, I think most of you have only asked me questions on Germany. So I think it's Germany, all right? So with the grade 11s, they will either bring you a question paper with A or B, Namibia or Russia. You know your school. The students that I teach, they do Namibian history. So you just choose Namibia, forget Russia. Or you just choose Russia. I think I had 2 guys from Tumeb. They're doing theirs on Russia. I think they're teachers, right? They're teaching on Russia. So I knew there are schools that are doing Russia. So you just focus on Russia and forget Namibia. Or you just choose Namibia and forget Russia, right? Now, let's get into the inside of the question paper. Now, your question paper is supposed to be having an introduction. I don't know if some of you guys are having a question paper right in front of you, whatever year it is or whatever depth study it is, just to confirm with me. So your question paper is supposed to have an introduction. Well, first it has a heading and then an introduction. The introduction is basically telling you that the sources you are going to find, the sources in the question paper are all based on the topic. There is no way that your topic is talking about women in this. I used to say Nazi, but I'm gonna continue to say Nazi. I've been taught how to say the word is actually Nazi, but I'll say Nazi just because it's uniform. So let's say that your topic is women in Nazi Germany, right? So expect all your questions to be on women. All your I'm about to die because of a coke. Expect all your sources to only be on Nazi women. So there's no way that your topic is women in Nazi Germany, and you find a question asking you about the era of Stresemann, or they'll start asking you about the type of military tactics that Hitler was using. They won't ask you that, right? So the questions will always be based on the topic that you're given. Introduction, my dears, is a guide. Your introduction is only to guide you that your questions are based on a certain topic. Don't go and quote the introduction in your answers. Don't do that. You don't go and say, quote, unquote, the introduction is saying this. No. Now, let me skip to the back of the question paper, right? To the back of the question paper, you find now the questions. The questions differ, right? By differ, I mean they can decide how they want to ask you, whether they're going to be focusing on the reliability, agreement, what you are learning, the differences. They decide. I'm just going to focus on the questions that you guys sent me, right? They decide on how you are. They decide. But one thing I know for sure, the last question will always be the same. They will always give you a statement, and I'm going to show you how to answer that question, all right? So now let's go back to the whole question paper. I think I'm going to answer this one with the questions. Now, the question I have first, somebody asked me, do I need to write the codes in all questions? The reason why this person is asking me they need to write the codes in all questions is because this person has watched my previous videos, or they know there are codes. Now, with depth studies, there are codes to follow. There are many codes, but there are 5 very important codes. VI, which is valid inference, meaning is you answering the question. Whatever the question and however the question is answered at you, your interpretation, your conclusion, however you see the question, is how that is considered as a VI. After the VI, and please write them in this order, don't write with the SS. The moment, one thing about depth study, I said it's very easy to pass, but the problems comes with how, not ask how we mark, but strict markers. If you start with a contextual knowledge, we'll give you MI, which means misinterpretation. You get 1 out of whatever mark they have. Always start with your VI, your valid inference, depending on how your question was asked, right? So you have your valid inference. Now, after your valid inference on how you answer your question, you need to support your source, which is the SS. You need to support the source. Why are you saying this in your VI? Now, how do you support your source? There are 2 ways of supporting your source. When it's a statement or a paragraph, what you do, let's say you're answering only a question, one type of question, by a one type of question or answering one source, it's a type of question like, what can you learn in source A about women's Nazis' attitude towards women, for example, right? So that's the question, what can you learn about Nazis' attitude towards women? So your valid inference will be you going into the paper, source A, study source A, and then you say, okay, so I'm learning, right, that in Nazi, is that I'm learning that women in Germany they were treated that their place was only in the kitchen, the church, the children. They were not allowed to have freedom. They're not allowed to have any belongings, because that's what you are reading, right? It's your interpretation of the text. Now, after I've said so, because that's just the interpretation, it's not really what is written, but it's the interpretation, it's what you got out of the text. Now, after I've said so, you now need to cement your answer. You do that by giving the SS. As I said, the SS comes in 2 forms. When it's a paragraph, right? When what the source you are studying is a paragraph, you need to quote and unquote, meaning you take a sentence in that source that is supporting that women's place was in the kitchen, or women were not allowed to own businesses, right? So you quote and you unquote. You don't explain anything, because that's a paragraph. Right. Now, let's say source A is not a paragraph, but it's a picture, or it's a cartoon, or it's a poster. That is now where you need to interpret. So you say, all right, this is supported by the fact that in the poster, we can see that there is a woman who is in the kitchen, right? Because that's what you are seeing. That is what the cartoon is showing you. So that is how you are interpreting. That is how you're supporting it, by interpreting your cartoon, your poster, or your photograph. Now, after you're done with the code SS, the next thing will be contextual knowledge. Now, contextual knowledge is what you learned in class. A lot of students don't know this, but contextual knowledge sometimes is actually found in the introduction. If you read the introduction, it will tell you exactly what the source is about, and you are most likely to find the answer there. Let me say, for example, if any of you even have the Crystal Natch question paper for the grade for the grade 12s, your answer is right there. It's talking about the 9th and the 10th of November 38, what transpired, how the Jewish were killed. So now when you come to code CK, contextual knowledge, this is where you talk about what you learned in class, regarding that type of topic. So if you're with the women, you have to learn about what were you taught in class about women, how are women treated in a Nazi Germany. Or if you are doing Namibian history and maybe your paper is on the contract labor system and the contract labor system, so you have to talk about the contract labor system. How are the people treated in the contract labor system, for example? As I said, in keep it to a maximum of 3 ideas. Don't go overboard and write a whole page. Try to keep it to a maximum of 3 ideas, not lines. I said ideas. So where your full stop ends, it's where the other one starts. Before I continue to my next point, somebody asked me in paper 2, do you write paragraphs? Yes. Paper 2, all we know are paragraphs. Paragraphs only. So where the one ends is where the other point starts. You don't go under. So if your VI ends here, your SS starts here. You don't start your SS under, you start your SS next to where the VI ends, all right? And then the CK follows. Now, after you're done with your CK, you need to go to your CR, which is cross-referencing. By cross-referencing, we mean you go in the whole question paper, right, and check all the other sources and see which source is having the same message as the source you are asked to study, right? So I'm still on the idea of I'm only working with one source, right? For now, I'm still going to come how you answer a question with 2 sources at once. So I'm only with the idea of one source, right? So you go in the question paper and then you answer, or you find a source that has slightly the same message as the one that you asked to answer. So you answered by saying source A has the same message as source F, for example. And then if it's a paragraph, you quote, you quote the paragraph, quote unquote. The way it is, you copy and paste it, right? So you have to find a sentence in source F that is giving you an idea that the two are buddies or are friends or they relate to one another. Now, if source F is a picture or it's a cartoon or it's a poster, this is where you need to bring in your interpretation skills. You need to interpret that source A and source F have the same message, because source F shows a woman who is breastfeeding and surrounded by children, for example, right? So you need to interpret that. After you're done with your CR, we go to your TR, which is the testing of reliability. Meaning, can you rely on the source really? Can I really trust this information that I'm being given? Where do you check the source? The caption. For those of you who don't know what a caption is, you know, under every source, if only I had a question paper, that's my apology. Oh my gosh, okay. If only I had a question paper, a caption, you know, at every end, and I mean every single source, at the very end, there are small words under. They normally have who published it, when was it published. They always have a year. Sometimes they might have a year and the name of a person or a name of a newspaper, but sometimes they'll just write unknown 1942, right? So that is where you check the testing of reliability. How do you test the reliability? So you, after having checked your caption, so after you, okay. All right, let's continue. So now that you're quoting, or no, sorry, you're testing the reliability. This is how you are testing your reliability based on 3 things. You need to test the reliability of the author, meaning who is the source. It should be down there, I said. The audience, no, so it's always author, date, author, audience. Okay, so the date, when was it published and why was it published that year, right? Who published it and why did this person publish it? Why must we trust this person to publish that information? And audience, when this person published this information, who did they have in mind? Let me give you an example, right? So let's go to the Crystal Match, for example, right? So you have a source, and this source was published on the 11th of November, 1938, right? So we start with the date. So you start off by saying source A is reliable or unreliable, depending on you, obviously. No 2 teachers are going to be alike. I mean, not teachers, but no 2 student answers are going to be alike. They will always interpret this. That's why even the memos, if you have seen the memos for depth studies, they are very, as a student, you hardly understand them because every learner is different and you will interpret it your way, right? So let's say I find it reliable. So I'll be like, so A is reliable because, okay, I think I forgot something before I go to the testing of reliability. After this CR, ne? The contextual, the cross-reference. Remember I said everything is a paragraph. Now, after you are done with the CR, please skip a line and go to the TR. It's for better marking, as it's for the teacher, right? So you skip a line and then you now start with your testing of reliability. So let's say source A is reliable because date 11th November 1938. If you just write for me 11th November 1938, me being a very strict marker, I'll probably not even give you a 0. I mean, a mark, I'll be like, and then what? I need you to explain to me why this date is very reliable. So I'll be like 11th November 1938 because it was 2 days after the Kristallnacht, meaning the information was still fresh, right? So I'll come author. Who published the author? Let's say in this case the author was the New York Times, right? So write New York Times or New York newspaper. Again, I need to say why is it reliable, right? So I will say New York newspaper because it was far from the British, from Germans, and it had no reason to give false information because they were not afraid of Hitler. Obviously, people in Germany were going to lie and say, no, the Kristallnacht was caused by the Germans and not the Nazis because they're afraid. But if an American newspaper is saying that the Nazis were responsible, so I'll say I can rely on it because they're not afraid of Hitler, you know. Audience, who did they print it for? I'll say the world, so that the world is aware of what is happening in Germany. Now, that's one student. Now, the other student might say, no, it's unreliable. So that's another student. Same source, but the other student thinks, no, it's unreliable. So I'll be like, unreliable. Date 11th November 1938. At the time, Americans were not allowed. American press was not allowed in Germany. So where could they have gotten their information? So that's why they're saying they cannot rely on it. It's an event that is fresh. They're not allowed into the country. So where did they find the information? Number 2, New York newspaper. It's an American newspaper. They would say anything just to sabotage the name of Hitler or the Nazis, for example. Audience, the world, to make the world see or to make Hitler look like he was a bad man, for example, right? So after that, you are now done with your question, right? Because we are dealing with one question, because I have it here. What can you learn from source A about Nazis attitude towards women, right? That's only one source. But you find questions with 2 sources at once. So how do I answer that type of question? Let me see if I have a person who asks me that questions. All right. So I have here, it says, for example, there are 2 questions, ne? So it says, how reliable are sources D and E, ne? How reliable are sources D and E about Hitler's what is the word? I'm not getting the word. I have it in a show. I forgot the word. Anyways, let me just, how reliable are sources D and E about Hitler's attitude towards women? Let me just use women again, all right? About women, Hitler's attitude towards women. So we have D. Remember, we have D and E, 2 sources that we have to answer at the very same time. How reliable? Now you're probably asking, but aren't we supposed to test the reliability at the end? So how is it coming at the bottom? And I mean at the top? Because this reliability is not the same as the other reliability. With this type of reliability, we are not asking you to look at the caption. We are asking you to look at the content, what is in the source itself. And they want you to know about Nazis' attitude or Hitler's attitude towards women. The reason why for paper 2's answers are a bit not so clear is because paper 2, you can only answer these questions if I have a question paper in front of me. Even if you ask me one source, I need to go through all the sources for me to understand and to be able to answer. So I'm just giving you a picture of how you're expected to answer a question that comes like that. So if you ask like that, how reliable are sources D and E about Nazis' attitude towards women? So you have to say, okay, reliable. So we have to go into the content. Now you have to see, what are they talking about in source D about women's Nazis' attitude towards women, and what are they talking about in source E about Nazis' attitude towards women? So you'll be like, source D, it's a two-way kind of thing. You can answer both of them together, or you can decide I'm only focusing on one, and then the other one I'll focus it at the bottom. It's up to you. So I would say source D, but I would put them together because they're saying D and E. So I'll say both sources D and E are reliable in telling us that the women of Nazi Germany were treated like they had no rights, right? So now I need to go in. That's my valid inference for the both sources. That's I say both sources, right? So I'm focusing on the both of them. Now I need to support. Why am I saying so? Now here when I support, I really need to single out the source. So I'll say source D, right? If it's a picture, I will explain why or interpret what am I seeing in this picture, in this cartoon on the poster that is making me say that women were treated as if they did not really, they were not important to society. And if it's a statement, I need to quote the statement. So I'll say source D. If it's a statement, I'll say source D, quote unquote, then I'll write it, right? And then I'll say source E, right? Because I'm still doing the SS and there are two sources, so I need to focus on both. So I'll say source E, quote unquote, the sentence the way it is. But as I said, if it's a picture, so I'll have to say source D, explain why I'm saying so. And guys, when you're explaining, you don't use this. This means, the inverted commas means that you are copying and pasting what the person is exactly saying or writing. But when you are interpreting a picture, those are your own words. There's no need for, okay? So only when you are copying and pasting a statement that is there. And then we go now to source E. We do the same, we interpret. Now let's say D is a picture and E is a paragraph. Then it's still the same thing. Source D, interpret it. Source E, quote unquote, right? Now we are done and we go to the contextual knowledge. Remember we said both sources are talking about how that the women were seen as having second place in Nazi Germany. So what do? You write contextual knowledge on women's place or how they were treated in Nazi Germany. So with the contextual knowledge, you don't have to specify because you're saying both, right? You don't have to specify that this contextual knowledge is for E, this is for D. I'm a teacher. I'm supposed to know these things, right? So when I'm marking, I know which one belongs to what. But in this case, it's both. I just know it belongs to the both of them, right? Then we go to cross-reference. Cross-reference again, we're dealing with two sources, guys, right? So with the cross-reference, I need to focus on D and I also need to focus on E. Very important, and I keep saying this. Never cross-reference a source that is in the same question, right? What I'm trying to say is, never say source D has the same message as source E, or source E has the same message as source D. No. Find other sources. Those two cannot cross-reference one another. There are many sources in the paper. Find other sources, right? So you have to now focus on source D first. So you say source D, right? Has the same message. I'm going to assume that it has the same message as source A. So I'll say source D has the same message as source A. And then I have to find a statement in source A that is making me believe that it goes hand in hand with D, right? Or if it's a picture, guys, a cartoon, a poster, you know what you gotta do. Interpret it. I'm done with D. Now let me go to E. So again, I go in the question paper and I'm going to find a source that has the same message as source E. So I say source A, E has the same message as source I, for example, right? And so I have to quote if it's a statement or interpret if it's sorry, I got distracted by Simeon. He's asking, or are we supposed to quote again at cartoon post? No, cartoons, pictures, posters, you can't quote anything there. It's a cartoon. You probably find no words even. I mean, let me give you for example. There's this famous cartoon of Joseph Goebbels. If you don't, Joseph Goebbels was the minister of propaganda in Germany. It's just Joseph Goebbels drawing Hitler. There are no words. So what are you quoting? You have nothing to quote but to interpret. Another cartoon I'm going to give you as an example. Going to Namibian history. There's a famous cartoon of two dogs, fighting for a bone. You have the United Nations and then you have the one dog written South Africa and the bone is Namibia. What are you quoting there? Nothing. You don't quote anything. You have to interpret. What does the cartoon mean? Why are they two fighting for the bone? You know, what does that mean? So to answer your question, Simeon, you don't quote cartoons because most of the time there are no words attached to them. They're just pictures and you just interpret. Anyways, where was I? Cross-referencing. So with source E, you find your perfect cross-reference, and you quote it if it's a statement or a paragraph. And if it's not, when it's a picture, cartoon, or poster, that's when you have to interpret. Then we move to the testing of reliability. Again, we are studying two sources at the same time. So even the testing of reliability, each source has to be tested alone. So what do? You focus on D. Again, skip a line because we are now with the testing of reliability. You say source D is reliable. Date, author, audience. I already told you where you find the reliability. Where do you check to test the reliability, right? So after you're done with that, then you go. Source E is reliable or unreliable. Depends on you as a student. Date, author, audience. But we are mostly not likely to be done with that type of question because they're saying, how reliable are sources D and E, right? On evidence on how the Nazis treated women. Now you feel like they're not really reliable on a certain portion. Then you say, however, source D and E are not reliable because source D does not really tell us what happened to women that were against Nazi, right? So it's not really reliable in that area because it's not written in there. So you need to go in the source and to find something that is not talking anything that has to do with that. So you have to say source D is not reliable in the fact that it does not tell us that it does not tell us on how the women in Nazi that opposed the Nazi regime were treated. And then you find the SS. If it's a statement, you know what you gotta do. If it's a picture, cartoon, or a poster, you still know what you gotta do. And then you say again, or however, or while source E is not clear as to whether the women that were treated as second class were in agreement with what the Nazi was doing, or were in agreement with the fact that their husbands just had to take the full portion. Then again, you find the SS as to why you're saying that, and that's where you end. We don't go to contextual knowledge. We don't go to another CR, because if we have to go to CK, CR, and TR, it will be a repetition, which we don't want to do that. That's why I say we don't finish, because sometimes we just put things that are not really relevant. Okay. All right. Let me go on to the question that somebody asked me. That was the code, right? Somebody asked me, where do I test the reliability? So somebody says, I'm struggling with answering the last question in depth study. Help me. Okay, the last question in depth study comes in a form of statement every single time. And that statement is always attached to your very first topic. Because as I said, the sources always have to do with the statement. You're always given a statement at the top there that whatever they want to talk about, whatever depth study they want to. So the last question is normally out of 10 or out of 12 marks, depending on your level. So it always comes in a statement. In this statement, it will be, I'm gonna gain focus. Let me focus on the Nazi women, and I also maybe just focus on the South African one, so people don't say I'm being very biased. So let me start with the Namibian one. I would say that the statement comes as the Namibians were pleased with Germans' occupation in Namibia, right? That is what the statement is saying. So what do you do? How do you answer that type of question? Because it says it comes in a form of a statement, so how do you agree, or do you agree with that, right? So what you're gonna do, there are many ways of answering this, or how you want to answer it, but I personally prefer one way. I think it's easy for marking. I'll just first, as a student, I'll just write sources that support. That's all I'm gonna write. Sources that support the statement. So what do? I'll go in the question paper name, and I'll find all the sources that agree that the Namibians were happy with the German occupation. Remember, they're saying Namibians. They are not specifying if they are black, they are white. They're just saying Namibian. So maybe you will see that a white Namibian was happy. So you just say sources that support the statement. So you go in the question paper and you find all the sources that support. So let's assume with this type, guys, I have to do assumptions because depth study is a question. I need to have the question paper. All right. So in this case, I'm assuming so that when you get the questions, you at least know how you are supposed to answer them. Are we together? Right. So we're going to say sources that support the statement. So let's assume source A supports the statement. Source B does not. Right. Source C supports the statement. Source D supports, but source E does not. and we go on until the last source, right? So we write sources that support the statement. So we write source A. If source A is a paragraph, what you're gonna do, you write source A and then you quote unquote a statement, a sentence that does say that Namibians were happy with Germans' occupation. Now, if it's a picture, a cartoon, a poster, it gets a little bit lengthy. Now, let's say source B, source C, because we say B doesn't support, source C supports. But in this case, source C is just a picture let's say, what is this man's name that got killed by the Germans? Hendrik Witbooi, right? So we see Hendrik Witbooi sitting with Ludwig, for example. So we'll say, because it doesn't show that this person is being killed or being violent, so we just say sources that support the statement B. So what you gotta do, you first have to give a BI name on how these Namibians were content, or why they were content with the German occupation. Now, after that, that's when you have to give the SS, which in this case, you have to interpret the picture like, for example, I'm going to give you the example is how you'll be like, Namibians were happy with the German occupation because they signed the protection treaties, for example, right? So the picture depicts, or the picture shows Hendrik Witbooi sitting next to Ludwig. There's no violence happening. There's nothing happening. It's just the two of them sitting, for example, right? So that's your source B because it's a picture, right? So the same goes on all the sources that do not support. Skip them. Don't write them. Leave them out, right? Because there will be a portion for them to be written. Now, let's assume all your supporting sources are now done. Now, we're going to go back to our paper and we're going to write sources that do not support the statement. Now, all the ones that we left, like source B, it doesn't support. So we have to go to B and write source B. If it's a statement, a paragraph, you quote, unquote, just to support why you're saying that they were not happy with the German occupation. And if it's a picture, you have to show that they were not happy, for example, because you can see that they are being detained at Shark Island, for example. Again, you have to give the VI first before you can SS. I'm so sorry about depth study, guys. It's so many information in so little time, but I'm just trying to help. That's why I have very, very detailed videos on that you can watch in your free time and you can rewind it like you want. But now I'm just trying to give you a picture of how you answer this last question, because somebody asked me to explain to them how you'd answer, right? Now let's assume now you're done with all your sources. You have those that support, you have those that do not support. Honey, this does not give you full marks, ne? For you to get full marks, you must then test the reliability of two sources of your choice. Any two sources of your choice. So I always tell my students, I always advise them, take one that supports the statement and one that does not support the statement. How do you test the reliability? That is the easiest thing. Remember, it's the last question, meaning that all the questions, you have already answered them in your paper, and they all have a testing of reliability. So what do? Let's say you want to test the reliability of source A. You just go to source A in your paper where you have written, and then you copy and paste the testing of reliability that you have written for source A. Copy and paste it the way it is, because there shouldn't be any difference. So people shouldn't even struggle because you're just like copying and pasting. Then you go to a source that does not support the statement. In this case, let's say G doesn't support the statement. You go to G because definitely G was asked already. There's no way G was not asked in your whole question thing. So you go there, and then you copy the testing of reliability for G, and then you paste it. That way, you get your full marks. If you leave out the testing of reliability, we're not going to give you full marks, okay? So you need to test the reliability. Okay, do I need to answer the questions in depth study? Oh, that's another question that somebody asked me. Do I need to answer all the questions? Okay, we still have time. We have about 25 minutes. Do I need to answer all the questions in depth study? When you say all the questions, do you mean like the whole question paper? Because as I explained at the beginning, you are not only going to get a question paper on Germany alone because you are studying Germany. Remember, there are other depth studies. So you choose yours. Or you're not only going to get a question on Russia because you study Russia or Namibia. There are other depth studies. So let me answer you by assuming that you are asking me that, do I need to answer all the questions in my depth study? Yes. Every single one of them, from the first one to the very last one. I can't tell you how many questions they would be. because they can say there will be 5, they can say there will be 10. It depends on them. But you need to answer every single one of them. And all your codes must be written in all except the last question. Remember, I just showed you now how to answer the last question. You didn't see me talking about the cross-reference and talking about the contextual knowledge. No. Okay? All right. So you need to answer all the questions. And then somebody asked me, how do I answer the question that says, what is the message of the cartoon or poster? I'm going to use the same cartoons I just used now. For Namibia, I'm going to use the bone. I hope you guys have seen it. There's one, sorry. For Namibia, I said, there are 2 dogs, 2 dogs. Yes, my dear Rivaldo, even ordinary level students, they have to test the reliability. You all have to test the reliability, all of you. Otherwise, we won't give you full marks. There's a picture of 2 dogs. One dog is labeled as the United Nations, and the other dog is labeled as South Africa, and there's a bone. They're fighting for a bone. And in that bone is written SWA, Southwest Africa. So the question is asking, what is the message of the cartoon? Now, in history, we normally have a big message and a small message. What is a small message? A small message is just you saying, there is a dog, there are 2 dogs, and they're fighting for a bone. I'll give you one, because at least you can see they're dogs, right? But we want the big message. What is the message behind the 2 dogs? So you have to talk that these cartoons is a representation of what was happening in Namibia. South Africa and the United Nations were fighting for Southwest Africa. South Africa refusing to place Namibia under the trusteeship of the United Nations, and the United Nations never giving up on Southwest Africa, and they continue to fight South Africa for the liberation of Namibia, right? That is now your VI. Now I need to support my source. Why am I saying so? Now this is where you tell me what you see. See, the picture or the cartoon shows both the dogs labeled South Africa and United Nations fighting for the bone, in this case being Namibia. All right. Now, after you're done with that, what do? You have to give your contextual knowledge, your CK. So you need to talk about the information that you have received in class regarding the fight between Namibia. What was the United Nations doing to try and get Namibia? What was South Africa doing to try and say no to the United Nations from getting Namibia? Do you get it? Now, after you're done with that, you need to cross-reference, meaning you have to go in the question paper again and find a source that is, I'm gonna check the Punita later. Let me finish my statement. So that means I need to go in the source, in the sources, all the sources, and find a source that has the same message as talking about the fight between the United Nations and South Africa over Namibia, right? Now, after I'm done with that, then I have to test the reliability, meaning skipping a line and then writing my testing of reliability. I check this cartoon. There should be a caption under. So it's either reliable or not reliable. But guys, cartoons are always really not reliable because it's an exaggeration of the reality. Photographs are reliable because at the time there's no Photoshop. But cartoons are really not reliable because it's an exaggeration. And I'm going to tell you how it's an exaggeration when I tell you about the one I used of Hitler and Goebbels. So you can say it's a reliable or not reliable, date, author, audience, and we are done. Now I'm going to go flip over to Germany because that was Namibia. Now let me flip over to Germany. Now I'm going to use the same cartoon that I used. There's a picture of a very thin Adolf Hitler, right, sitting. And then we have Joseph Goebbels as the painter. But the painting is a very, he's painting a man, a giant with muscles. So he's giving this idea that Hitler was a warrior or a big man, right? Now you're asking what is the message of the cartoon. I say there's a big message and a small message. If you just tell me that the cartoon shows that there's a man that is being drawn by another man, but the man that is being drawn is skinny, but the picture is big, that's just 1 mark for your ink. Big message. So for your big message, you have to talk about the relationship between Goebbels and Hitler. As I said, Goebbels was the minister of propaganda, meaning everything that had to do with Nazi, with Germany, had to be seen with exaggeration, like Hitler was the savior. So your big message will be, the cartoon shows what is the message of the cartoon? The message of the cartoon is that Joseph Goebbels, being the minister of propaganda, was to always depict Adolf Hitler as a savior of Germany, that he was the hero, he was the person that was going to bring unity, he was the person who was going to bring wealth into Germany, and that he was just in control of everything that goes out to the media. So I need to support the source. Why am I saying so? The cartoon shows Adolf Hitler. I'm sorry, the cartoon shows Joseph Goebbels drawing Adolf Hitler. Although Adolf Hitler is a very skinny man, he is being shown like he's a big man with muscles. And then I move on to contextual knowledge. You need to talk about propaganda. What was given to Germany? You know, the information that the Germans were getting regarding Nazi. What information were they getting? Obviously, they were never going to get information that Nazi was weak and everything like that. No, they always told, you know, that Hitler was the power. I mean, was the savior of the people that needed for. That's what you would be expected to write. And then after that, the CK, you move on to cross reference again. Find a source within the same question paper that has the same message, and then you cross-reference the two. You can either say I cross-reference. Most ordinary level can just say I cross-reference source F. Let's assume the cartoon is an F. So ordinary, you can just say I cross-reference source F with source G, and then you explain if it's a picture, a cartoon, or poster. You explain how, and then if it's a paragraph, you have to quote why you say that you have to quote a sentence that says that the two do relate. But or in a high level, you cannot say across reference. That's for babies. So you have to say source F goes hand in hand with source E, or source F has the same message as source E, and then you have to justify why the two you say they have the same message. Skip a line. Let us test the reliability, and by testing of reliability, you have to look at the cartoon. As I said, most of the time, the exaggeration. I'm just telling you right now, it's an exaggeration. There's Hitler so skinny, and then there's a picture of that is being painted. Is, you know, it's Hitler, a very big man. So obviously, can you really rely on information like that? Of course not. So you have to say it's unreliable, date, author, audience, and always justify your 3 points. Why this date? Why this author? Why the author published this information? And for who was the information published? Okay. Let me see. I'm gonna be going into your comments, and let me see if I have another one. There's a person asked me, how do I answer a surprised question? Surprise question most of the time comes two sources in one. Most of the time, it really never comes as just, are you surprised by source B? It's always like they're trying to give you a comparison. By trying to give you a comparison, you have to compare. So you have to say you are surprised and you are not surprised. So for this type of question, it's not only the content that matters, it's also the caption. Who is saying that? Imagine, right? So we have beautiful, let me use the crystal match. I remember there was a question like that, I think, of students, if I can remember very well. It was a source, it was a teacher, and the teacher was telling the students, like, I'm gonna just summarize what the teacher was saying. Was telling the student, like, do not be afraid of by what you were seeing about what is, because it was about the crystal match. Do not be afraid about what you were seeing, because Hitler wants a better Germany, a clean Germany, right? And the caption is telling us that it's a Nazi person who's talking like that. All right. And then the next source, which because it was, let me see the letters A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. H, that comes before I. H is the one that is saying, don't be afraid, Hitler wants a clean Germany, a better Germany. And then you have the I one. The I one is now talking about how badly the Jews, or the Jews, depending on how you pronounce it, were treated by Germany, and how Hitler, was just being a bad person. So with that, the question I think was, after reading source I, are you surprised what source H says? Right? I think that's how the... Okay, I'm gonna answer your questions, guys. Don't worry. This is my last question. Then I'll come to your question. So the question was, after reading source I, are you surprised by what source H says? So you now need to check the content and the person who's saying it. I mean, you'll be very... Let's say, for example, the person was against Nazi and they're saying beautiful things of Nazi. You'll be surprised. So then, after reading source I, are you surprised by what source E says? Source H says? It depends. Are you surprised or are you not surprised? Say, yes, I am surprised. I'm very surprised because... Okay, after reading source I, are you surprised by what source H is saying? No, I am not surprised. Why? Because this person is pro-Nazi. the information is pronotative. So I am not surprised by what they are saying, right? So I have to now find what is in source H that is making me say that I'm not surprised, right? And then I now go to the same thing, the CK, the CR, the TR. Then I skip a line. However, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised by after reading source I, because at the time, Hitler did not like the Jews. So there was no way that he was going to allow them to live in Germany. So he was getting rid of them, and that he would influence the mindset of children to make them believe, or to make the people of Germany believe, that getting rid of the Jews was for the greater good of Germany. And then again, I now have to find a source in SS in I, why I'm saying that I am not surprised. So that is a both-sided question. And after I'm done with that, I can now here also give the contextual knowledge, because I'm focusing on I, so it's not really the same as the one I just focused on E. So I have to give the CK on how the Kristallnacht happened, or how the Jewish people were treated by Hitler. Then of course I cross-reference, and then I test the reliability. The testing of reliability, separate. Cross-referencing will always be separate. Source E with its H with its cross-referencing, source I with its cross-referencing, and source H with its TR, which is testing of reliability, and source I with its testing of reliability. I'm closing my eyes because I'm really trying to remember the sources. Okay, let me go to your questions. How many minutes do I have? 15 minutes. I'm very punctual. Whew. Are we together, guys? Are we really? Kamundu Yvonne says, how many ideas should we give for the VI? So for the VI, even just one. An idea is not even a sentence. I mean, an idea can even be 3 sentences, or you can even give 2 ideas, but even just one, but try to make it a bit long. Even though it's just one idea, try to even make it 2 lines or 3 lines at least, not just like a small short line and you think you are done. Okay. Am I able to have a second? Am I able to have 2 valid inference and 2 supports before I continue with the contextual knowledge? 2 valid inferences, like, are you referring to 2 different sources? Like, you have a valid inference for B and a valid inference for C? Is that what you're trying to say? Or are you telling me you're going to have 2 types of valid inference for just A alone? You can have 2 valid inferences for A if they are all going the same path, if it's for the same thing. But if you're talking about 2 sources that are not together, I mean 2 sources being answered together, you can have them, but you must really specify, especially if they're asking you differences, like the differences, what are the differences or similarities between the 2 sources. So if you have to talk about the differences, then you have to really specify how A and B are different. But if you talk about similarities, you normally just have 1 valid inference, because it's similarity. They should have the same thing. And then the other part of your question says, in support. Again, it's the same thing. If you are having 2 sources, differences, each source must have its own support. Same sources, I mean similarities or agreement of the source, both source, they must all have this, not really the same, but they'll have 2, but each must be in line with what you're saying. Okay, sorry, please save your life. Technology. I'm gonna try. What do I do? How do I save a life? I just end, and then what? Is that saving? Joseph, I think you are late. You said, I really do not understand what is valid inference. A valid inference is just basically you answering the question. All right, so it's your interpretation, it's what you are getting from the source. So it's basically you answering whatever question you are asked. If you're asked the differences, you talk about those differences. If you're asked what you are learning from the source, you talk about what you're learning from the source. If you are asked if source B and E agree, then you have to, when you just telling me that they agree or they disagree, that is your valid inference. Are we together? All right. Lucia is asking, are we going to lose marks if we don't write the CK? Why don't you want to write the CK? They are codes. And I told you have to write all codes. VI, SS, CK, CR, TR. All right? So then you have codes such as differences and agreements. Those ones will always come in your VI. Shoot, my phone is flat. Let me find my power bank. Otherwise, we are not gonna have a good ending. Just give me a second. All right, there we go. My power bank is flat. Anyways, we're almost done. Huh? Okay. Yes, you have to write the CK for everything. All of them need a CK. Let me now keep going up. Okay, answer this question. All right, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, Natalia. You're welcome. Thank you, Romalen. You're welcome. Okay, I think here you guys are just commenting to one another. I answered this question of Simeon. I don't know why Stenio is asking where Tangi is. I'm sure your full-time students will not disappoint you. I actually don't even have full-time students. I don't. I just have students that I used to tutor on Zoom because I really don't have the time. Even right now, I'm taking out 2 hours, but it's for a good cause. I really hope my 2 hours are worth it and that you're really, really gonna put this to use. Okay, this is just Brittany telling people not to quote the introductions. Please don't quote the introduction as I've said. Simeon is saying it's important to know. Yes, oh yes, it's very, very important. Okay, I think I'm done with the questions. Simeon is asking, do I need to tablet at surprise or agree? I don't understand you. Can you please just re-question? Can I say re-question? Re-ask your question, please. I don't really get your question. What do you mean, do I need to tablet at surprise or agree question? No, do you mean like, do you need to write in a table? No, you don't. We don't do tables. Everything has to be in a form of a paragraph. I think I know why you're asking that. Let me tell you why you're asking that. You're asking that because maybe you are studying with a booklet. Booklets are just a guide. That's why they give you the answers in a table. If you write a table in the examination, we are not gonna fail you. You are gonna fail yourself. You have to write everything in a paragraph because you have to go beyond the booklet. The booklet only gives you a point. That's why I don't like booklets. I don't even use booklets. I don't even advise my students to use booklets because what students do, they just memorize booklets and then you're like, the exam was so easy. I aced the examination. I wrote what was in the booklet and then the results come here for you. Because you waste your knowledge. Because the thing about depth study is that depth study needs you here, your mind, brain. You must work. It must work. It must think, critical thinking. And the booklet is just there to guide you. Sometimes the booklet will not even have all the codes. It's just there. And talking about codes, guys, don't write the codes on the margins. When you're writing, don't write the paragraph. Let's assume this is your paragraph. Please don't write, this is my CK, this is my VI, my SS. No. You can write at the back and say, okay, let me in question 1, do I have my VI? Is my SS there? That is for yourself. So as teachers, when we are going to mark, it's our responsibility to write here VI, CSS. If it's there, I'll write on the margin VI. If it's not there, I'm not going to write it because it's missing. But as I said, guys, no VI, 0. They will always write MI because you misinterpreted. Okay? Okay, this question. Okay, let me start from, okay, Zadine, I don't know how you pronounce your name, is answering another person. John is saying, do you have to write saying this exam or contextual knowledge? No, that's exactly what I'm explaining now. You don't write it. I'm a teacher. I've gone to school. I'm supposed to know what is contextual knowledge. Just by reading your answers, I'm supposed to know which one is your valid inference, which one is your SS. SS is easy. I can see when you start interpreting. I can see when you start your quotation marks. I'm supposed to know these things. I'm supposed to know which one is your CK. I'm supposed to know your CR, your TR. So you as a student, please, I beg you in the name of Jesus, don't write, this is my CK, this is my CR. I'm a teacher. I'm supposed to know these things. Your teachers are supposed to know these things. You just write. That's why I say, go. You can even maybe write when you're writing with a pencil. Say, okay, this is my CK, my VI, and then please erase them, because when, I don't know if you guys have ever been marked, but when you are marked, your teachers, when you get back your answer sheets for depth study, it should come back red here, VISS, but they only write the codes that you have written. If they are not finding the CK, they'll never write on the side CK because it's not in your answer. So please don't write my contextual knowledge. No, I'm a teacher. I'm supposed to know these things. Obviously, a CK will never look like a TR. Okay, must you always TOR? It's not TOR, it's TR, which stands for testing of reliability. Okay, now I understand the O, but it's TR, not TOR. Yes, you must always TR, always at all times. Um, can we download the video if you're done? The question is, can I upload this video when I'm done? I hope not. Dale saying, what? Oh, guys, thank you. Thank you so much. I have 5 minutes. So in my last 5 minutes, I just want to say, are we going to watch this again at your page? I'm hoping I'm able to upload this on my page so that you guys can be able to watch this, because you still have to tonight and tomorrow and Sunday and even Monday morning before you go, right? I said I know that the grade 11s are only writing on the 30th, but you can always go back and watch. I hope I'm able to say this. But I just really want to say thank you for honoring my invitation today. I see the numbers keep going up, keep going down, and thank you so much for likes. And I hope after today you guys are not just going to be watching my channel, but really going to subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, thank you so much. And me, ne, I get emotional very fast because I'm a last born. I just want to say that it has been a pleasure, being your history teacher. I started this journey, I think, 2 years ago, of just helping people on YouTube with history. This is actually my first live. I don't know if I'm going to be doing this on a yearly basis. I don't know. But I just really want to wish you all the best, grade 12s. Just relax. Don't overthink your answers. Don't overthink it, ne? And the thing about history is even the book, well, mostly for the primary, not primary, but for before grade 11 and before grade 10, the book is written, it used to be written understanding history. It's not for you to memorize, it's for you to understand, because once you understand history, you can tackle the question. It doesn't matter if you, in the booklet, you read the question as a C question. If you understand and the question in the exam comes as a B question, you will be able to answer it. Don't memorize history. Memorize the years, they are very important. Memorize the people involved in that year, but understand. So I'm really wishing you guys all the best for Monday. I'm available. I'm gonna try to be available on in my DM, like you guys are always in my DM, and I appreciate that. I don't think there's ever been anyone in my DM that I've not answered. I don't think so. If I haven't answered you, forgive me. The spirit of the other one was trying to come and bother me, but I really try my best to answer each and every single one of you in my DMs on Facebook, on Instagram, even right here on YouTube. And I just really want to say all the best for your morning paper and your afternoon paper, and to the grade 11s. I know it's early, but I really want to wish you all guys the best. As I said, relax, just enjoy the paper. Come on, you've been having a good YouTube teacher. Don't let me down, and don't be like the students for last year that I helped them through the year and they didn't come back to say they got what symbol. But there were those that really came back, and it gives me so much joy just reading somebody tell me, I used to get an F and I now got a C, or I used to have this, I now got a grade 1 because of your help. Yeah, that's all I want to say. But really, all the best for your history examination. History is very dear to my heart, like really dear to my heart. I love that subject. Well, I just love history in general, and I love helping the Namibian child in every single corner, because you guys are from every single corner of this country. Today I even received a message from somebody in Kurenkuru. I received messages from people in Korikas, and thank you for supporting my YouTube channel. Thank you for everyone that, as I said, that honored my invitation. Somebody asked me one last question. Will I get a mark if I say yes and no? I'm assuming that Loide is asking for the last question in depth study. Yes, you will get marks. As I said, for the last question, there are different ways of answering. You can say the one I just taught you now of saying sources that support or sources that do not support, or you can go with the yes and no method, where you say source A, yes, and then you quote, right? Then you say source B, no, and then you quote or you interpret. Both are correct, but at the end of all your methods, for the last question, just remember to test reliability of any two sources of your choice. Remember, one that supports and one that does not support. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Thank you guys for your kind words. Really, thank you for your kind words. Maybe it's because I'm a Christian, but when really somebody just says God bless you, it's a very simple It's a very simple phrase name, but for me, God bless you does just not mean God bless you. For me, I interpret it as God empowers you to prosper. So when somebody tells me God bless you, they're telling me that God empowers me to prosper in everything. So I really, really appreciate your God bless you. And for all of you that are late, I'm sorry, but I'll say how I can save this live. I want to rewatch myself. That's one reason, and the other reason is that you guys can do better. All right, so that's it, Miss Amores. Thank you so much, and I'm very punctual. As I said, I'll be ending the live, and if I did not answer your questions, I'm sorry. I only had 2 hours. I wish I could teach you guys the whole night, but I have a life outside YouTube that I have to attend to. Okay, bye. Oh my gosh, this chat. Okay, let's see. How do I save this? Until now, nobody told me how do I save this live. Because if you guys don't tell me, I'm not gonna save it because I really don't know how I'm gonna save the live because I've never gone live before. This was my first time. So maybe somebody can just comment. How do I save this live? Otherwise, we're gonna lose it. All of us. If I lose it, then Victoria, I'm asking, how do I save it? Don't just tell me to save it. Tell me at least, Kucha, if you do this after the live ends, this is what you have to do. Yeah? Please, somebody tell me. You youngsters. I think all of you are young. Even if you're my age, you're still young. Zaideen. How do I save the live? That's all you need to tell me. I'm very good with instructions. I hope you guys are good with instructions as well. I've been giving instructions the whole night. Okay, fine. I'm just gonna figure it out. Okay. Good night, Miss Amaris. I'll be guys next time on my video, which is probably just going to be next year. I don't want anyone, please, not to come back and say, ma'am, I passed this examination, or people saying I failed this examination. I'm not in Korikas. I'm in Vinduk. All right. Bye. Oh, you guys must contribute to my Coke net. I bought Coke so that I can be awake for this time. I normally go to bed a bit early because I always wake up very, very early to work. So okay, I can always send you my number to send me an e-wallet so that I can pay my Coke. I'm joking. I'm doing this for free. And because I care for the Namibian child. Okay, I talk too much. Oh, gosh. Bye-bye. Okay, so you're saying you can save your life by sliding to your last button in the row of the like button. Sure. Okay, I'm gonna figure it out. Good night. Are you sure you want to stop streaming? Yes.